So this is the Brooks Brothers Oxford cloth button down. It is the made in USA one. There's the tag on the inside. It's 100% cotton. It doesn't say what type of cotton, so I don't think it's Pima, or they would probably advertise that, or even Pima. But it is very, very soft. So some things that I like about this shirt. Number one is the traditional fit that you can see there. So it's not the regular fit, it is the traditional. I think it's also known as Madison. They're calling it traditional now. And I like that it's full cut. So you can see here, there's almost no taper in the waist that you can discern. There is a slight taper when you actually measure it, but you can't tell just from this angle. And what that means is you have a nice full cut. It's super roomy, it's not restrictive. And I really like that about the shirt. The other thing about the shirt that I really enjoy is because it's the Madison cut, or again, the traditional cut, this armhole here is about 11 inches when measured laying flat. And what that does is it basically prevents this armhole from riding really high into your armpit and causing sweating, discomfort. Sometimes you can feel it up there if it's a really high armhole, and I don't like that at all. And so I really, really enjoy this aspect of it. The other thing about this shirt that I really like is the actual cotton. It feels super soft. It's not super thick. I've had thicker shirts, thicker Oxford shirts, but this one's one of my softest Oxfords, and so I really do like that. I wish it was a little bit thicker, but because of how soft it is, I really do enjoy that. One thing to note about this shirt, it's not necessarily a pro or a con, it's more personal style. Since this is the Heritage Collection, it does have some vintage aspects to it. Number one, it doesn't have the second button here. I prefer the second button. It just makes it easier when you're rolling up your sleeves, but this one does not have it. It does not have a locker loop on the back. I wish that it did. It does not, but it does have the box pleat, which I enjoy. It's also not a split yoke in the back. It's one solid piece. This is a size 15.5 and 34 arm length. I'll post the measurements so you can see them. It's again in the traditional cut, so it's nice and roomy, full fitting. I do enjoy this cut. I also got this shirt in the regular cut, also known as the Regent cut. And while I did like it, I prefer this one more. The biggest difference that I could tell was the armhole. Was the most notable thing. The armhole on the regular cut is much smaller, so it was riding just a little bit into my armpit. But I also sized up in the regular fit, so I went to a 16 in the collar, and with those measurements compared to the traditional, they were basically the same body size, but the armhole was different, as well as the neck size. The neck size on the 16 regular did not fit me, but the 15.5 fits me perfectly. So just for my personal body proportions and what I prefer in a shirt, I would recommend the 15.5 and 34 in the traditional fit. This does have a nice collar roll. I'll measure it out and see what the length is. Length looks to be about 3 1/4. This collar, I do believe, has an interlining, but it is not fused. It's not a stiff interlining. I don't mind it. Normally I prefer no interlining, but on this one, I really like the way that it feels. The reason I say it's not fused is because I can take it and pinch it apart in here on both sides of the collar. So overall, I'm actually really happy with the shirt off the rack. The fit for me is perfect off the rack for my proportions. Again, it's the traditional cut. It's nice and roomy. I like how the armpits are cut really full. And again, I just like how it's not restrictive at all. I also like the material. I wish it was a little bit thicker, but again, because of how soft it is, I really enjoy that. I think it makes up for it. And I don't think it's too thin. There are some Oxfords that I've tried on that have been too thin and I've been unhappy with them, but this one I'm really happy with. Some things that I would improve upon the shirt. Number one, again, I'd probably make the cloth just a little bit thicker. Number two, I would definitely add a locker loop. Number three, I'd maybe put a button on here. Again, I don't think it's a huge deal, but I think a lot of people would prefer to have a button right here, most people. Another thing that I do like that I forgot to mention is I actually prefer how many buttons here it has on this front placket. A lot of the traditional Oxford cloth button downs are missing this bottom one. And for me personally, I wear my shirts untucked quite a bit, and this will flap up and you can kind of see my stomach here. So I prefer how many buttons this has. Another thing that this shirt could improve upon is quality control. So a couple things about this shirt. Number one, you can see a couple of loose threads. It looks like, I don't think that this is gonna affect the structural integrity of the shirt, but I'm not 100% sure. But I've never washed it and I haven't really worn it too much. So this is something that I'll just have to follow over time. And if something changes, I'll update you. The other thing about this cotton is there are some imperfections. There's quite a few imperfections on Oxfords to begin with. But here's an example. This is personal, this is gonna be kind of personal preference, whether or not that, this is a $200 shirt, I got it on sale, but something like this for somebody, if there's a couple of these, and there are a couple of them, this might be a turnoff for some people. The other thing is the threading, the stitching. The stitching is quality, but again, you'll see these end threads here. I don't think it affects the structural integrity, but I wish that they would go through and clip these off just because, again, it's a $200 shirt. Yes, I got it on sale for about $110, but that's still something that a lot of people probably don't want to see on a $200 made in America shirt. I'm not 100% sure where this shirt was made. I believe it is the Garland factory in North Carolina. The Garland factory was originally owned by Brooks Brothers back in the day, but then they closed operations and another company ended up purchasing the Garland factory and then contracted with Brooks Brothers to continue producing shirts. This shirt, I want to say, came out in 2024. And I think it was early 2024. And in 2023 and early 2024, the Garland shirt factory was still up and operating. However, as of, I want to say November or December, the Garland shirt factory has completely closed down. They're in the process of selling the building. They've sold all the machinery. And so I'm not 100% sure if this shirt was made before that company closed down. But I think it's possible that it was made at the Garland shirt factory before it closed down. Here are the dimensions of the Brooks Brothers shirt. Length is about 30.5 inches. Chest is 46 inches pit to pit. Waist is about 45 inches pit to pit. Bottom of the shirt is about 46 again for a slight flare. The collar point is about 3¼ inch. And again, the armhole is about 11 inches when I measured it. So this is the Japanese Kamakura Oxford cloth button down in the Vintage Ivy collection. This is 100% made in Japan, also 100% cotton. Doesn't say what type of cotton. And I'm gonna go over this shirt now. So this shirt, I think it retails for about $120 in the United States. You do have to pay for shipping depending on how much you order though. One thing though, I actually got this shirt in Japan, and with the value of the yen currently, this shirt cost me $70 over there after taxes. You can technically do it tax-free over there too and get it for I think around $60. For $60, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this is the best deal on the market. If you're in Japan and you like Oxford cloth button downs, definitely go to these stores in person, pick some up and bring them back to the States. I'm gonna go over this shirt now. This collar, so this is an unfused, unlined collar. Again, that's part of the vintage collection. They do that as part of a throwback. Another thing about the throwback is it does have this button on the back to keep your tie in place and keep your collar down. I do like this. Some people don't like this. I do like it. Also, you can see as I pulled the shirt over, this does have a locker loop. Again, I prefer the locker loop, and it does have a box pleat to go with it. This material is very soft. It's not quite as soft as the Brooks Brothers shirt, but it still feels great. It does feel maybe a little bit thicker than the Brooks Brothers shirt, which I do enjoy, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd basically have to cut the shirt apart or email them to see exactly how many ounces this is or how many grams. Some things about the shirt for this one. These shirts do run slightly slim. And what I mean by that is this is a 16.5, and the collar is maybe a little bit large on here, but the body fits me almost perfectly. I do have this in a 16, and the 16 is too small, so I did have to go up a size. It's not quite a full of cut as the Brooks Brothers when you match up the neck size and the body size, but you can still get a similar fit, but your collar will be different. One thing about these armholes, they are 1 inch smaller. They measure around 10 inches compared to the Brooks Brothers. Those were 11 inches. So I personally prefer the Brooks Brothers cut. This rides just a little bit too tight, and sometimes I get a little bit of sweating here. and so I just prefer the Brooks Brothers cut. However, this shirt, the quality of the shirt is great. Some other notes about this shirt are, sorry, I did have the sleeves rolled up earlier. As you can see, it's pretty wrinkled. It also does not have a button here. So this is similar to the Brooks Brothers. Again, this is a vintage collection, and so it does not have a button here. It's part of a throwback. I don't really feel that strongly. If I was given the option, I'd put a button here, but it's never gonna make me not buy a shirt because of that. Personal preference though. The other thing about this shirt is, since it's the vintage collection, you can see it's missing that bottom button here that I had talked about in the Brooks Brothers shirt. Not a huge deal, but sometimes when it's windy and I'm wearing my shirt untucked, it does come up and you can see my stomach right there. Just a little minor thing. When it's tucked in, it doesn't make a big difference at all though. One thing about this shirt, what I will say, is the quality is awesome, especially for the price. And again, if you can go to Japan and pick a few of these up, it's unbeatable, I think. How I was saying on the Brooks Brothers shirt, how there was imperfections in the Oxford cloth. On this Oxford, I can't find any imperfections. It looks great. The stitching is fantastic. I want to say it's 20 stitches per inch. The Brooks Brothers, I counted about 18 or 19, but it could be 20. The stitches are really hard to see. There's a tiny bit of a loose thread, of course, as I say this, but again, it doesn't affect the integrity of the shirt at all. But this is probably as bad as it gets. There's just one loose thread right there. I can't find any nicks or anything in the cloth like I did on the Brooks Brothers one. I'm just kind of going through the shirt and showing you that there's no imperfections there. And so overall, I think that this is a better made shirt. Is it my perfect shirt? Not necessarily, but that's personal preference and fit preference. So for me personally, if I could combine the fit of the Brooks Brothers shirt with the quality and craftsmanship of the Kamakura shirt, I would take that any day for an off-the-rack shirt. Again, I don't see any imperfections on this Oxford cloth at all, and that's in comparison to the Brooks Brothers, where I did find quite a few. So I would say overall the quality of this one is much better, but it's not my perfect fit personally. Again, when comparing the Oxford cloth, you can see that the Brooks Brothers has a few more imperfections. Some people might say this adds character. I prefer my shirts to not have any imperfections like this. I think honestly the Kamakura is a better quality shirt, a better made shirt. Time will tell how well they hold up. I have had my Kamakura shirt for about a month or two now. I've washed it multiple times, no issues. It did shrink maybe 1 or 2%. That's what the store clerk said as well. You do hang dry them. The Brooks Brothers, it says that you can tumble dry low, but I'm also going to hang dry because this one fits me perfectly right now. And I don't want it to change at all. Here are the two fabrics side by side to compare for thickness. The Brooks Brothers is on the left and the Kamakura is on the right. They look very similar in thickness when compared here. I honestly can't tell too much of a difference in person when I'm looking at them. However, I will say the Brooks Brothers feels like it's using a finer yarn than the Kamakura. I think maybe it's 2-ply yarn, which leads to a softer and finer finish. I think almost like a pinpoint Oxford, if that makes sense. It's definitely not a pinpoint Oxford cloth, but it does share similarities in how fine the actual material feels. The Kamakura feels like a single-ply cotton yarn to me, which tends to be a little more coarse. Honestly though, this is personal preference. I think both have advantages and disadvantages. In terms of the actual feel, I'm happy with both of these shirts and I think they're both great. Okay, so last thing, I wanted to compare how the shirts fit on me personally. Side note, please forgive the mess in the background. We're currently in the process of getting our nursery ready, so just ignore that. But anyways, I'm 5'11", I weigh 165 pounds, just for reference. The first set of pictures are the Brooks Brothers shirt. You can see the shirt may look a little bit long if I wear it untucked, but it doesn't bother me too much. You can also tell it's definitely a fuller fit. It may be hard to tell on camera, but the armhole is definitely oversized, which is my personal preference for comfort and help decrease sweat stains. It's really hard for me to find a shirt nowadays with a fuller cut armhole, so I'm very happy that I found this one. Here's some pictures with the shirt tucked in as well. You can see even though it is a full shirt, I don't think it looks overly baggy on me for what I'm personally comfortable with. You could also decrease some of the blouse type look with a military style tuck, but it doesn't bother me enough for that. And here's the Kamakura shirt for comparison. Again, I did have to size up on this shirt because it fits a little bit slimmer. This is a size 16.5, and the default sleeve size is a 35.5, so you can definitely tell the arms are a little bit too long. You can't change the sleeve size unless you get a custom-made shirt for the vintage Ivy style of shirts. For me, it isn't a big deal because I almost always roll my sleeves up, but it is something to note, especially if you're going to size up and want to wear your sleeves down. The size chart on the Kamakura website is pretty accurate according to my own measurements, so I would reference those if you want to order a shirt from them. Overall, to me, the Kamakura shirt just looks and feels a little bit more tailored. The chest sizes are similar between the two shirts, but the waist size is about a ½ inch smaller in the Kamakura, and the armhole is about an inch smaller in the Kamakura as well. And then lastly, here are the collar rolls for reference. The first one here is Kamakura. I think it looks fine. The roll is pretty subtle. You can see here it is less stiff given that it's entirely unlined. And then here's the Brooks Brothers collar roll. I prefer this one over the Kamakura, but it's just personal preference. This collar definitely has more structure with its lining, but it's not so much that it feels uncomfortable or stiff to me. And that's it, but let me know if you guys have any questions or anything.